Welcome to Prep Central, New Mexico's premier high school sports show. This show is presented by Western New Mexico University. If you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us continue to bring you more content like this. You can find this episode and all our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as on all your favorite platforms like YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud. See the show notes for a discount on a digital subscription. We hope you'll consider that. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading local news source. Hey everyone, welcome to Preps Central, the Albuquerque Journal's high school sports podcast. I'm James Yodice, the prep editor here at the Albuquerque Journal. A lot to talk about today. The format's going to be a little different than I usually have for my podcast. We've got a special guest here in studio who I will introduce here in a second. We're going to primarily talk seeding projections today. As I sit here today, it's Wednesday, October 30th. The state football playoff brackets for 11-man will be out Sunday morning at 7:30 for 6A through 2A. So we're going to talk, me and my special guest, we're going to talk some projections about how we think the playoff fields are going to shake out. First off, before we do that, I want to thank our sponsor, Western New Mexico University. We want to thank them very much for their support of this podcast. So let's get into it. My guest today is probably the only person in this town in media that's maybe busier than I am. He is the radio voice of New Mexico United. He is the sports primo voice for Cleveland Storm home games, including football. He is now the co-host of ESPN Radio's 101.7 The Team's afternoon show, which comes on at 4 o'clock every day. He is Adam Diehl. Good to see you, brother.
I love it, man. It's a lot of fun. It keeps you busy. It's great.
I know. I always think, November, I love the weather in November. November is my least favorite work month, only because there's never a let up. We're getting ready for all the fall sports, and somewhere in there I got to get ready for basketball. There's a big signing day coming up in a couple of weeks. So November always stresses me more than any other month of the year, but it's fun. I'll be glad when we get to, let's face it, state football championships, and a month from today, November 30th, is when we'll have the 11-man finals. And you and I are going to talk today about projections, and we're going to weave in some of the key results from Week 10. So Week 11 begins Thursday night. La Cueva's game was moved up to Thursday because of a lack of officials. They're playing Albuquerque High out at Community. St. Pius, which has already clinched the District 2 4A title, is playing out at Wilson against Manzano. So we got a couple of games going on Thursday, and then, of course, the meat of things coming up on Friday. Before we get to that, let's talk. We're gonna work our way up. We're gonna tease this out. We're gonna go from 4A up to 6A. We're gonna talk a little 2A and 3A at the end, but in terms of seeding projections, we're going to primarily focus on 4A, 5A, and 6A today. So we will start with 4A. Bloomfield's undefeated. If we're talking teams that are going to get seeded in the top four, Bloomfield's number one, really good. They're going to be a number one seed.
The big game was the one you went and covered against Bernalillo.
Against Bernalillo, right?
Pretty good game, right?
It was sloppy, actually.
Okay.
It was cold, it was windy, it was very rainy, and
a
lot of penalties and
weather,
turnovers. I kind of wish that game had been on grass, but nobody plays on grass anymore. It would have been, we would have had the dirty uniforms and the grass stains and
I missed that.
Dudes, lifting chunks of turf out of their face masks. I would have liked that.
Okay.
Bloomfield won that game 20-7, and that was a game Bernalillo had its chances to win. So you've got Bloomfield is going to be the top seed. The number 2 seed, if I'm seeding, I would have St. Pius ahead of Bernalillo.
It would be by the way they're playing, but not by the way it's seeded.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this before you get into everything real crazy, okay? The districts are different now, and it kind of almost seeds itself completely the way it is. So, for example, there's only 2 districts in 4A, 5A as well, and so you can't be seeded somebody that you finish behind in district play. So it really does kind of make it like okay, this is the order, let's take max prep rankings.
And in 5A, and when we get to 5A, I think we'll be able to see that's really clear there.
Do you like that, or is this, does it, I guess, to be determined almost?
Let me give me another year.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a 2-year thing. It could be they'll vote to change it again, depending. None of the coaches I've talked to seem to like this. Even though the NMAA said that this is what the coaches wanted, and maybe I'm just talking to the wrong coaches, but I haven't met very many coaches or talked to many coaches who like these huge districts and getting started with league play so early. We'll see how it plays out. Like I said,
Would you know what it does?
Let's give it another year.
It gets rid of one of the criteria. There's 6 criteria, right?
Well, not anymore. There's only 5 now in football. There are 6 in the other sports. There's only 5 now in football. The wins against district champions
because it doesn't exist really.
No longer
it necessarily
exists
doesn't exist.
So in football, we've now down to 5 criteria points.
So that's what it does. Is it sheds one of those criteria points, and it just makes it rely on your finish in district play everything, and then max preps basically everything else.
Yeah, I think it does make it easier to see with fewer districts,
right?
As opposed to having 4 or 5 districts, and you're like, oh gosh, you got to mix and match from one district to another. Like I said, Class 5A is the one that's most noticeable there, and we're going to get to that in a second. I'm okay with the big districts. I mean, look, I've seen in this job, I've seen a lot of iterations of how districts are formed.
Yeah.
Look, every time the NMAA reclassifies and redoes the districts, there's always a couple of wrinkles in there. You're like, that doesn't really seem like it works. Like Portales and Silver being in the same district. It's stupid. But Silver and Portales are 400 miles apart, and they're district partners. But Silver's kind of stuck because they're the only one in the entire that half of the state, that bottom half of the state, the southwestern corner, that is of that level. They're really stuck. One year, Silver had to play in a district other than their own classification because there were so few teams available for them to play. So Silver's always been that outlier team that makes it difficult. But yeah, Silver, poor guys. I mean, they're playing in a district with Valencia and Pius and Portales. That's just in Grants. That's a lot of travel. Having said that, circling back, so Bloomfield and Bernalillo, clearly going to be both in the top 4. Bernalillo finishes at Taos on Friday. Taos has been sneaky good this year. Mm-hmm. Bloomfield is down south to play Grants on Friday. And Grants and Taos are 2 teams that are both, in that 4 to 6 range, I think, that are pretty good. Not in Bloomfield's class, but look, Bernalillo had to score late to beat Grants the other day, 15-12. They were losing that game in the 4th quarter, and they scored about midway through the quarter to win that game. So they've had, the Espanola game. They were down 14-0 at Espanola a few weeks back, came back, tied it, and won in overtime. So these teams are more evenly matched with Bernalillo than they are with Bloomfield, clearly. So Bernalillo's road trip to Taos, that's a game. That's close to a coin flip game as far as I'm concerned. But I still think Bernalillo has done enough to be a top 4 seed.
And they're going to be. I probably think they're going to be the 2. And as you mentioned, St. Pius has been rolling, and they look good, man. But as far as the seeding thing, I don't think St. Pius is going to have the credentials to beat Bernalillo. So as long as Bernalillo does not lose, James, I think they'll probably gather a 2. I'm with you though. Like if you're just basing it off of who probably should get it, just based off of a opinion piece, St. Pius is that team that's looking better and better as this year goes on, and the biggest threat to Bloomfield, in my opinion, probably.
Yes. So. And I wrote that. I did a column on Pius a couple of weeks ago, and said they are, in my mind, a full year ahead of schedule. I didn't think this was going to happen until...
Very young, right?
Right.
Very talented.
All their top skill kids are sophomores, all of them. Mm-hmm. And they're all blossoming like crazy. And one of the reasons for that is they all played as freshmen, which is not ideal for any football coach. You don't want to have freshmen playing varsity football.
At least
and Pius got dinged up like crazy. Yeah. Some of their key guys got hurt, and they went out quickly in the playoffs, I think, to Espanola. I thought it was going to be November of 2025 when we would see this from St. Pius. To me, they were a full year ahead of the projection I had, which means I'm just an idiot and don't know. But my gosh, Isaiah
For
Carpenter.
the amount of times we could be wrong, man, because we always have to put our opinion out there. I will say, last year I got ripped. I did this almost a year ago, right before the state championships. I got ripped because I said Cheeto Lombrero wasn't going to have the day in the state championship against Cleveland that he had the week before. And he literally posted the clip from the show and like completely demolished me, which I deserved every bit of it, right? So when we're wrong, man, we'll get it called out for sure.
This has always been one of my pet peeves. When I'm wrong, people are very quick to put a little knife in my side and remind me, nice going on that one, Yodice. But when I'm right,
which is more than wrong.
Yeah, it's crickets.
When
I'm right. Yeah. No, and so I constantly challenge people. I'm like, okay, you got me.
Yeah.
But where were you when I got you right in this big game a couple of weeks ago? I didn't hear anything
just
from you
comes
guys.
With the territory, doesn't it?
I know. I didn't hear anything from you guys saying thanks for picking us. So you don't get to yak at me if I'm wrong. I'm like, you got to be fair.
First to say hey, I messed up. I messed up.
I tell people, you got to be fair. I'm like, it's okay to challenge me and go after me if I got something wrong, but you better be there when I get something right. Otherwise, I don't want to hear it. I'm like, don't cherry pick with me. That's a pet peeve I have.
Yeah.
Don't cherry pick. But yeah, you're right. It comes with the job. So yeah, Pius, Isaiah Carpenter, their quarterback, Herschel Holloway Jr., their running back.
He can run.
He's a sophomore. Carpenter's a sophomore.
Yeah.
Cale Cox-Liggins, their great receiver. He's a sophomore. Curtis Flakes III, the son of head coach Curtis Flakes. He's a sophomore. All these guys are blossoming. Yep. And Pius has a few really good veterans sprinkled in. Guys playing key positions. So they're just getting it done. They're playing great. Like I said, if I'm seeding, I would have Pius 2, Bernalillo 3. But, look, the 2 and 3 seeds are fairly interchangeable anyway. So that's not like a huge deal.
The big thing is that last bye. Who's going to get that last bye?
Right, there's a big difference between 3 and 4.
What Taos and I think either Taos or Grants, depending on how this week goes.
Yeah, right. There's a big difference between seeded 3 and 4.
Yes, there is.
Where you end up on the same half of the bracket with Bloomfield, and you don't want that. So, having said that, Portales is in the mix. I saw them play Academy the other day. They're on their third quarterback. They've been dinged up a lot. I mean, they're achieving quite a bit for a team that's on its third quarterback.
Yep.
Their starter went out, Paxton Culpepper, Dallas Lozano, their backup quarterback. He went out the very next week when they come up here to play Bernalillo. He went out. So now they're down to Tommy Lopez, their third-string guy, who's doing a fine job. Look, how many high school teams could survive losing both your top 2 quarterbacks and still be in the hunt for a top 4 seed?
Yeah, it's tough what they've had to battle through, and then they're starting to have some good games put together now. So I think just by the criteria wise, it's going to be difficult for them to get into that spot. But
I'm not entirely sure, only because there is a decent chance for a 3-way tie for third place in the other district, the Bloomfield district, between Taos, Grants, and Espanola. Espanola playing, I think, is it Aztec? That's a game Espanola should win. If Bernalillo and Bloomfield take care of business and beat Grants and beat Taos, that leaves Espanola, Taos, and Grants all tied for third place. And so the tiebreaker will depend a lot on points, between the 3. But it's conceivable this could allow Portales to sneak in as the 4 seed, kind of through the back door if we get a 3-way tie between Taos, Grants, and Espanola.
Do you know what's going to be big in all of these seedings? And all of them, everyone that we talk about, and it's never maybe that big. It's the coach's input form, which is essentially just the top 12 ranking. And the NMAA takes up like a point system almost. Every coach turns in who they think their top 12 list is, and then the NMAA tallies it up and then comes up with that list. And some of these, that are flipped or that we think from looking at what the coaches poll now is that's been put out is always usually different once these coaches put it out. And I think that's going to determine a lot of this that we don't know.
Yeah, see, St. Pius jumped over for the first time this year. St. Pius jumped over Bernalillo this week in the coaches poll. So if the same coaches that are voting
and they
in
don't,
the coaches poll,
I'll tell you this, they do it biasly. I know for a fact, I know many coaches, I will not call them out publicly, but I know they call each other, and I know they're like, all right, you put me here, I'll put you there, trying to avoid matchups, and that is a fact. Yep. So it is not a perfect science here when it comes to these polls.
I agree with you. But St. Pius picked up, if you're talking about criteria points, St. Pius has 2. If the coaches sheet, which is a total wild card, because we don't have access to this and we don't know how they're going to vote. So that's a criteria point we can't talk about in detail because we don't know how they're going to vote come Saturday night. If the coaches poll that came out yesterday, if the coaches vote the same way this weekend, Pius would have 2 key criteria points on Bernalillo. They would have a better district finish, and they would have the coaches poll. Now, I do believe Bernalillo is still ahead in the Max Preps poll, which is one of the other criterias, and Bernalillo is going to finish probably with a better overall record. And then the fifth one is head-to-head, which didn't come into play. So it could be those two are going to be 2-2. Depending.
You're
we'll
right.
see.
Theoretically, it could happen.
But we'll see. Both of these teams, I mean, Pius is finishing with Manzano. Manzano's a very weird team. They were playing great, and now they're in a slump. I think they've lost 3 in a row. And Grants, we talked about that. They're playing Bloomfield. Taos, we talked about them playing Bernalillo. Who knows what you're going to get with Taos? Bernalillo's offense has not been great. Look, they're not. They hang their hat on defense. They've got a great defense. I think they call it the Goon Squad, they call themselves. This is not a high-scoring Bernalillo team. I mean, they only scored 15 against Grants. They didn't have a big day against Bloomfield. They didn't have a big day against Portales. This team has struggled to put up points against the better teams. And they've got a pretty good quarterback, Uriel Castro, who's had some big games. But if you look at their games head-to-head against the really good 4A teams, there's not a lot there. They've struggled to score points. So will that be the case against Taos? I don't know. I think Bernalillo probably looks at this game and thinks, hey, if we want to make sure we have a first-round bye, let's win. And secondarily, I never could have imagined. I was on with Joe O'Neill, had me on the radio show on Monday, and we were talking about Bernalillo, and I said I never could have imagined a day where Bernalillo would be more of a football school than a boys basketball school. But that is exactly what has happened.
Yeah.
And now Bernalillo is a bona fide contender for a state football title. Man, I never thought I would see this day.
Well, I do want to, I guess this frustrates me a little bit too, is having 6 classifications in football just kind of waters the whole thing down.
But we don't. We only have 5. The thing is, we just number them. Everybody thinks we have 6. We only have 5. 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So there are only 5. The numbers throw people off. I don't know why we do it this way.
Look at like how many are in. Let's just take the next class we'll talk about, Class 5A. There's 16 teams.
And 12 of them are getting in.
Same
thing. And 4A has 15 teams.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
12 of them are getting in.
Right. So I don't know. I mean, I think there's a better way, but that's for another conversation, obviously.
It would be better with 8.
Because it is watered down a little bit.
I can deal with 12 in 6A. In 5A and 4A, given the current number of teams, 8 is the most we should have. It becomes way too inclusive, for my taste anyway. Of course, that's a discussion for another day. But so anyway, to finish up with 4A real quick, I do think Portales is still in the hunt. And we could see in a 3-way tie, it'd be interesting to see who wins the point differential there. I looked it up. I think it's Grants. I'd have to double check that. But it could be one of those two teams could be battling for the 4th spot. We'll have to see how things shake out.
I think it is Grants right now. And that depends on these last games. But yes,
yeah,
I think
if Grants beats Bloomfield, then it's a no doubt.
100%.
Then it's clearly them.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's move on. We're going to get into Class 5A, and we were just talking. Look, Class 4A only has 15 teams. That's not a lot, and all but 3 are going to get in. Class 5A has 16 teams. All but 4 of them are going to get in, and 3 of them are guaranteed out: Del Norte, Rio Grande, Santa Teresa. Those 3 are not going to make it, right. and then we'll have to see. And probably Albuquerque Academy is going to be that last team out. So we will start at the top. Roswell goes down to the Field of Dreams last week, plays Mayfield, who's been playing very quietly some really good football. They went on the road and beat Lovington in overtime.
Sure.
They had a really tough loss at home to Deming, where Deming scored with 12 seconds left to steal one. Mayfield's very quietly been playing some really good football. And they were leading Roswell a good chunk of the game on Saturday afternoon. So Roswell scores with, I think, 3.5 minutes left to tie the game at 20, missed the PAT. Then Roswell had the ball. They were driving at the end of the game. Kid caught a pass, got down to the 1, got tackled at the 1 on the last play of regulation. We go to overtime. Mayfield scores, kicks the PAT. They're up 7. Zai Carrasco from Roswell, their running back, scores on a 5-yard run in overtime, and Coach Jeff Lynn says, I'm going to roll the dice. They go for 2. Carrasco scores on the 2-point run, and Roswell wins 28-27.
It's so funny how that is if they don't get it, then they're like, that's what a terrible call. And then when you do get it, it's like, what a gutsy call. That's a great one. This district is nuts, though. I mean, this is where it works for me, is these large districts, and it's this competitive because it has. And we'll talk about, teams like Deming and the big matchup against Gadsden this week, because that will flip some things. But all the way up from Lovington to Artesia to Roswell to what I just mentioned, Deming and Gadsden and Mayfield, You just said
this
is a great district, and it's kind of solving itself to get into the playoffs because of how competitive it really is.
Yeah, we've seen so many great games in this district, and that's every week we have one or two really good matchups.
Yep.
Deming Gadsden this week is one of them. So Roswell rolls the dice. If they don't make the 2-point conversion, doesn't really hurt them too much. They're still going to be a top 4 seed. That doesn't really impact them. What the difference is, because they already had a loss to Lovington, they would. I might be remembering that wrong, but they had another loss, district loss. They'd have fallen behind Artesia, meaning they probably would have been seeded 2 for state rather than top seed. So Roswell knows it's going to have a bye. They finished with Goddard this week. Goddard's 2-7. It's been a struggle for Art Bolaños, their new head coach, who came from Jeff Lynn's staff as a defensive guy at Roswell, and then came over to Goddard. So it's been a struggle in that district for Goddard. There are a lot of good teams. They're the 7th best team in that district, and they're still quite likely better than every team in the other district, which we'll talk about in a second. But if we're thinking top 4, what I wrote the other day is Artesia 1, Roswell 2, Gadsden 3, Deming 4. I think those 4 still have the edge, and those are the top 4 teams in the district. So that's how it has to go. There's no other way for it mathematically to go. As we sit here today, we could have some upheaval this weekend that could change things. But when I sat down the other day, those were the top 4 teams. Those had to be the top 4 seeds. Nobody in the other district, like Los Alamos or Miyamura, is even close to any of those top 4 teams. So that's what we had, and then you had like Mayfield in there and Lovington, which has slipped after that great start. They've slipped. They've been losing quite a bit. So they've fallen down the standings quite a bit.
And you go to the other district, which is way behind. Okay?
Way
behind. It's night and day. You still will get a decently high seed, I think, for Los Alamos, just like looking it over. And the reason being is they're going to finish with a 7-3 record. They're going to finish as a district champ. And those 2 criteria right now, they're floating at 6 or 7 in the coaches poll right now. So I think they're going to find their way into the top 6.
I say 7.
Because of that. I mean, if you take them against Mayfield, for example, they'll beat them in coach, or maybe not even the coaches poll. They'll beat them, though, as a district champ.
They're going to be behind in both polls.
Right.
Which leaves them record.
But look at this.
And leaves them district placement.
Right, and in Max Preps right now, I think they sit at 7th. I think right now currently
they're behind the top 6 in the other.
But
district.
if you take them as a district champ and a high record holder, then there's potential there if the coaches poll has them above a team like Mayfield to be in the top 6. But it's kind of going to be depending on, again, that coaches poll.
Yeah, the projection I wrote the other day, I had Los Alamos at 7, Goddard at 8, even though they could finish 2-8. I had Goddard at 8, Miyamura at 9, then Highland, and then Belen Valley to finish out the top 12. Look, all these teams from the Northern District they're all going to have road games at these southern schools.
It's opposite of 4A, isn't it? I mean, it really is.
I had Highland and Los Alamos playing each other in the first round, district opponents.
Yeah.
And I don't think Amiri Mumba played in the first game against Los Alamos. I think he was still hurt. Him being back makes a big difference. Los Alamos has very quietly had a good season. They've had several good seasons in a row. A 6 seed, I can't see that. I mean, that would mean putting them ahead of Lovington or Mayfield. I can't see it. I can't see them going that way. I think it would come down to Lovington and Los Alamos, and I don't see how.
Well,
I don't see how Los Alamos
go to that coaches poll. Because if they do, they're going to get they can get a 5.
Right. See, this is one of the things that's hard to talk about.
Right.
Because the coaches thing is a total mystery to us.
It is.
We have no idea how these guys are going to sit down.
I kind of like that because then you could truly just lay this out, right? We could already put out a bracket and do the NMAA's job for them if there wasn't that. So it does add to that almost, when the NMAA used to do just a panel and get together as a group and decide how to vote this. So it kind of gives it that appeal, which I do kind of like. The subjectiveness to it maybe a little bit, and it does hide it a little bit.
And look, if you're seeded 7 through 10 in 5A, that means you're on the same half of the draw quarterfinal-wise with Roswell and Artesia. If you get a 6, that puts you against Deming or Gadsden, which is a way more favorable potential quarterfinal. Yes. Artesia and Roswell have had a lot of success against those teams.
They have.
Against both Deming and Gadsden.
Artesia
and Gadsden played Artesia pretty tough when they played at Bulldog Bowl, but Gadsden still lost by 25 or 30. Artesia and Roswell dominated Gadsden and Deming. So, yeah, I think I'd rather be, if you get a 6, if you're the 6th seed, I'd be happier there than if you're 7 through 10 and you win that first round game, and then you're opposite Artesia or Roswell in the quarters. And those two teams are still the two best out there. I love to see Gadsden being so competitive. Gadsden, I've said this many times, man, they used to be as bad off as just about any football team among the big schools as there was.
Yeah, I love to see the competitiveness in it. And again, what a big game against Deming. I want to say they're hosting, right? I think.
Oh, shoot. Now that you asked me that, I can't remember.
Okay.
But,
so,
Deming has
regardless, that's for the 3-4. Just
that's
flip
exactly
them,
right.
regardless of how that goes, is where that'll be 3-4.
Yeah. And, Deming with Ryan Alfaro, their quarterback, they've had a terrific season. Gadsden has played so well. I've made my picks. I know you emailed me your picks for this week.
I did.
I have not made mine yet. I haven't seen yours, and I have not made mine yet. I will after we finish the podcast. I haven't made my picks for this week, but I can tell you I'm going to take Gadsden in this game wherever they're playing. Dino Fazio, their coach, has done a fantastic job. Gadsden dropped down into 5A. They have found a home that suits them, like a really good suit. And they are making it work.
They are.
And Manzano kind of has done the same, dropping down from 5A to 4A.
So weird.
Even though they're a 5A program.
So weird.
Manzano's had some success, even though they're slumping right now. And I've said before on the record, I hope Del Norte decides to do the same thing and drop down from 5A to 4A. They can't compete in 5A. They just can't. Unless they get an influx of athletes, which in an established neighborhood like Del Norte, you're not going to get. I'd like to see Del Norte drop down to 4A like Manzano
Or just
did.
take half of 5A and combine it with 6A and half of 4A. And
Yeah, maybe.
it with the other half of 5A, please.
So, yeah.
Please.
On my list, I've got 7 of the top 8 from District 2. And then the winner, Mira plays at Los Alamos this week for the District 1 championship. I've not seen Los Alamos in person. I did see Mira when they played Highland. And they had some good offensive weapons on that team. I was a little surprised. They got some kids that can play and they can move the football. They're not great defensively. I like Los Alamos in this game, regardless of where they're playing. They are playing in Los Alamos, but I think the winner of this game becomes. I think if Mira wins, it could be Goddard 7 and Mira 8. I think if Los Alamos wins, it'll be Los Alamos 7 on the seed line, and then Goddard 8, Mira 9. But
I just don't see Goddard being voted above Mira.
I know it doesn't seem likely, but if you look
Especially
at the Max
with
Spread
2
poll,
wins.
they are significantly strength rise, rating wise, they are significantly stronger than
2 strong wins.
Look, one of their wins was against Valley. That's the only game the whole season in which a team from District 1 played a team from District 2. Yeah. And that's because nobody has any time to schedule anybody outside district.
No, because
you got to play 7 district
yeah.
games. So you got to play, the teams in your area. So there wasn't any room. And one reason Goddard played Valley is because Art Bolaños, the Goddard coach, and Billy Cobos, the Valley coach, went to Goddard together, and they're buds. They're longtime friends, and they wanted to play each other. So that was one of the things that led those two to playing. But, I would love to if we had more matchups between the districts, but I get why we're not. I mean, look, if you're Artesia and you got to play 7 district games, that leaves you 3. You're going to play Hobbs, you're going to play Carlsbad. And I can't remember who their other non-district game was against, but
and you're not trying to schedule against like a lower opponent just to get a district win because that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah,
so
So you have very little room to schedule anybody in a good course. So we lose that with the bigger districts. 6A, which we're going to get to here in just a second. With 3 districts, there's been a little bit more freedom to schedule. Like Centennial was up here to play Cleveland on the first week, and then they came back up to play Trisco the next week. Yeah. Cruces has played Rio Rancho and Cleveland and Volcano. So we've seen more good scheduling because the districts are not as big, so you have that extra game or 2 to schedule somebody good outside your district. So 5A is going to be really interesting. I mean, are we definitely headed for an Artesia-Roswell final? I would say yes.
I don't think that's a guarantee. I think
not
Mayfield,
a guarantee.
I think Mayfield has shown they could compete. I know Lovington can compete. Deming has been really dangerous. I don't. Once you get to playoff time, I feel like this bracket could have some room for upsets in it. It's a lot more competitive than what we're about to start talking about in the 6A bracket.
Yeah, and we'll see because Artesia has a game at the Field of Dreams against Mayfield on Saturday. I am coming how well Mayfield played against Roswell. I'm really interested to see how Mayfield responds the next week now to play Artesia, and maybe my opinion on Mayfield will change a bit depending on how this game goes. But Roswell had all they could handle with Mayfield. And Mayfield is definitely one of those teams outside of Artesia and Roswell, maybe playing as well as anyone, even including Gadsden. And Gadsden beat Mayfield for the first time ever this year. But Mayfield right now, maybe they're playing a little bit better than they were. This district is so big. District play has been going on for like a month and a half already.
The beginning of the season.
So, maybe they're playing a little bit better now than when they first played Gadsden. So, 5A play, I still think we're going to get Roswell and Artesia in the final. I haven't seen enough from the other teams yet. As competitive as some of these games have been in that district, and we've had a bunch of them. Every week it seems like we get one game that goes down, either goes to overtime or comes down, like Roswell Artesia a couple of weeks ago, 44-40. Mayfield beat Lovington 50-49 in overtime. Deming beats Mayfield with 12 seconds left. Yeah, Roswell beats Mayfield in overtime last week. We've had so many really great games in this district, which is what we all hoped we would get.
They'll just get district round 2 coming up.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Anyway, so that clears the way for us to talk about Class 6A. I'm a couple of minds on 6A. La Cueva clearly is going to be the top seed.
Yeah.
I do not think they're playing the best football of anyone in 6A at the moment. I actually think Cleveland, honestly, is playing better than anyone in 6A, in my opinion, right now. Now, Cleveland's not going to be the number 1 seed, and that's okay, and they don't deserve to be. They lost at home to Centennial.
Right.
They have been on fire since. You see them more than I do, actually. I've seen them play Cruces. I went down to the Field of Dreams, saw them play Cruces. They won that game by 10. We were both at the Volcano game the other day. Cleveland wins 38-3 and almost got its, I think, fourth or fifth straight shutout. Volcano kicks a field goal with 4 minutes left.
Yeah, that's the first points they gave up in district play.
Right. And the first points they gave up to anybody in New Mexico since September 12th, since that game against Cruces. The week after they played Cruces, they played Pebble Hills from El Paso, but which is a game they won as well, which was a great road win. But the 3 points that Volcano kicked the other day, first point scored on them by anybody from New Mexico since the Cruces game on September 12th, which was 6 blessed weeks ago. Their defense has been killing it. Farmington, Piedra Vista, Cibola, Farmington in particular, dominated those 3, and then
that game was while you and I did that game, and the reason why I bring it up is you've covered. I couldn't even tell you probably how many games you've covered. I've broadcasted hundreds of high school games. I've never been out of there in less than an hour. It was less than an hour. It was like right at 7:58. The game was over.
Exactly.
That was absurd.
They've been dump trucking everybody. So I'm not sure anybody. Now, one question, and I can't answer this as we sit here today. Cleveland lost its best running back, Juan Munoz, the other day to what I was told was an elbow injury. It looked like, honestly, you and I both thought it was a head injury because he kind of wobbled as he came off the field. Robert Garza told me later that night it was elbow, and he did not come back. He got injured in the first quarter, didn't come back.
And he's big piece of that.
And the good news for Cleveland is they're pretty deep at running back, but he's their best guy.
Sure.
So I don't know whether we'll see him against Rio Rancho on Friday, but we're thinking about Cleveland beating up on a Volcano Vista defense that have been playing fantastic. As you noted, they only give up 35 points in their last 4 or 5 games, and then they gave up 38 to Cleveland last Friday night. And Volcano got hit with a couple of red zone turnovers that got turned into points the other way.
Correct. But nothing really went their way that game.
No, they did not.
But I mean, it's a game I think that shows us there is a big separation between those two teams. And in fact, let's just be honest. To me, it feels like there's a big separation from the top 3, La Cueva, Centennial, and Cleveland. Now, I would say that there's a big separation even between Centennial and Cleveland and La Cueva. And as you mentioned, La Cueva hasn't particularly just been wowing us. But I'm going to put the but on that, because the Bears really haven't had to wow anybody. And it's hard to really stay motivated with the schedule that they've had. Truthfully, it really is, because they're just so much better than everybody else. And it's almost like boredom. I kind of see it almost as boredom now. Is that true? I don't know. That's just how I'm envisionalizing it. The biggest game that they had was the game you went to in Arizona in Flagstaff, right? And where they beat Pinnacle in a wild, chaotic, kind of stormy night, right? So besides that, what have they been able to get up for? They haven't had to get up for anything. So now, does that hurt them? Maybe it does.
Yeah, they played Volcano on opening night, but we only played 2 quarters and 2 minutes because of weather. They played Farmington outside the District 2. They have not been fully engaged for a while, and maybe that's part of it.
They're still the most talented team by a long shot.
I would push back on that. I would say they're the most
so?
talented team by a wide margin. I don't know that I would go there.
Okay.
They have the best playmaking group, I would say.
Okay.
With Cam Dyer at quarterback, Jaden Parsons, who has emerged as an unbelievably potent wide receiver, been catching touchdowns left and right over the last month. Cheeto Lambrera, who some nights I feel like doesn't get utilized as much as he should. Rico Marcelli, who I like very much, their offensive coordinator, he likes to throw it. He doesn't give it to Cheeto as much as I think they should, given their offensive line. And then, of course, on the defensive side, you've got Mason Posa, among others, on a playmaking defense. The thing is, and what I've said is when they played Los Lunas several weeks ago, before they got into this stretch of schedule, finishing with, Atrisco and Santa Fe and Albuquerque High, teams that they could beat, with their eyes closed. They go out and play Los Lunas, who plays them as well as anybody has the whole year, other than Pinnacle, in the first half, straight up, just taking it to LaQuave, taking it to them, playing a clean first half. And they were still kind of in this game at the end of the third quarter, too. That caught my attention. I like Los Lunas, but Los Lunas is not in the caliber of Centennial. They are not in the caliber of Cleveland.
No, I think Cleveland mercy ruled them, right? In the third quarter.
Yeah, like 55-7 or something. Yeah, so Los Lunas is not in the caliber of those teams, and they gave LaQuava all they could handle, including that running quarterback, Caden Reese. That caught my attention. LaQuava ended up winning the game by a lot, but to be honest, they had their starters in deep into that game, and they were still throwing it. The margin looked a little deceptive. It was closer than the final score would indicate.
Also, what bodes well for LaQuava is if we're seeding this out and we're playing this out, we know, you mentioned, LaQuava is going to be the 1 seed, okay? If Centennial take care of business against Las Cruces, which, Cruces has given them problems. They are true rivals now. That could be a big game that kind of flips some things here. But say Centennial do win like we think they will, there's your 2, and then Cleveland's 3, Volcano's probably 4. You would agree, right?
Absolutely.
Well, then look at the path that, LaQuava would get all the way to the finals. They avoid Cleveland, they avoid Centennial. They would have to play potentially, either Las Cruces or Volcano Vista, just depending. Obviously, I don't want to just throw everybody out, but it's kind of looking like that. Like they have an advantageous way all the way to the finals. They might not play a meaningful game until the state championship game.
The worst thing that can happen to LaQuava is Las Cruces wins this game on Friday, and Centennial drops down to the 4 seed, and then LaQuava and Centennial are in the same half of the bracket.
Which could happen.
Right, and I'm going down for this game on Friday to the Cruces Centennial.
As you should. That's the game to go to.
So Cruces could upend things. And remember, Cruces beat Centennial in the quarterfinals last year, upset them. And then they came up here and gave LaQuava all they could handle in the semifinals at Wilson Stadium.
Put up a lot of points, yeah.
Right. Las Cruces really, really went up and down the field on LaQuava quite a bit that night. I do not think Las Cruces has played as well as I thought they would this year. The night they gave up a double-digit lead up here at Community Stadium to Volcano. They struggled a bit with Rio Rancho. They played Cleveland. The Cleveland game.
They had, I think, a lead in the fourth quarter, didn't they?
The Cleveland game was a really entertaining game. That was a close game. Cleveland won, I think, 35-25. But that was a very close and competitive game. We'll see. I mean, you can never tell. Of course, in rivalry games, you never know. You just never know. So now, if Cruces wins, man, they become the 3 seed, and then Centennial goes to 4. They're not going to bump Volcano into the 4. Centennial's top 4 regardless, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
then,
they would have them on
then Centennial and LaQuava are in the same half of the bracket.
Sure. Yeah.
That could change things quite a bit. That's the big thing I'm watching for this week. Like I said, Las Cruces can play its way into the top 4. Even if they don't, they end up as a 5, and they play a 12 seed, which isn't going to be a demanding test. And then maybe they get a rematch with Volcano in the quarterfinals, which Cruces would absolutely love after the way they
kind of blew the lead up
here. So yes, I love those storyline possibilities. But in a rivalry game, who knows? Who knows what we're going to get? Cruz is perfectly capable of beating Centennial. This is going to be my first look and only look of the season at Centennial in the regular season. I did not see them against Cleveland, and I didn't see them the next week when they played up here against Trisco.
So
Heritage.
really, so we totally agree on 1 through 5, basically. Like, if Las Cruces lose, they will be the 5 seed. It's not going to affect them too much, but they will have to play a first-round playoff game at home at the Field of Dreams. So then, where do you see things going then after the?
Okay, let's say Centennial wins,
right?
And we get Volcano at 4 and Cruces at 5. After that, I see Los Lunas at 6. I see, man, it's tough. I've got El Dorado now in my top 8. I've got them at 8. I've got Rio Rancho at 7, tentatively. If Rio Rancho goes out and gets smoked by Cleveland on Friday, and man, look, Cleveland beat Volcano by 35, and Volcano beat Rio Rancho by 33. There's nothing, even in a rivalry game like this, there's nothing that tells me this game is going to be close. Nothing. There's nothing that tells me Rio Rancho is going to keep this close.
Has just done a nosedive. This is a team midway through the season. I said, even when they went and lost to Centennial, and it was, Centennial kind of pulled away and got him good, I thought, well, this is a team that could be dangerous in the postseason. And they've done the exact opposite since that Centennial game, really. They probably should have lost to PV. They almost lost to Farmington. They got clobbered by Volcano Vista shutout at home. They're having internal issues all over the place.
Yeah, the Farmington game was a good win for them, because the PV game the week before caught me completely off guard. I'm like, I cannot believe Piedra Vista took them down to the wire like that. That, for me, was a red flag.
Actually, we're winning most of the game, too.
That was a red flag for me.
Yeah.
So I'm like you. I don't see Rio Rancho making any noise in the playoffs at this point as we sit here. And maybe the nature of the rivalry game allows Rio Rancho to keep it closer with Cleveland than we might think. But I don't see any way Cleveland doesn't win this game by 3, maybe 4 touchdowns.
For now,
honestly.
I see you as Rio Rancho 7 and then El Dorado grasping that last. And
El Dorado's such a weird
game.
team. I don't know if you've seen them, but of all the playoff teams that are going to be in the field that I've seen, this one is the most vertically challenged of all the teams that are going to be in the playoffs. And I don't even need to have seen everybody, like a Hobbs or something. They can't throw it. They can't throw it at all. They can't throw it a lick. They're a primarily running team. And Charlie Dotson's, he's put together a really good defense. They had some injury issues at the quarterback position. Art Abreu, the former Taos coach, is now calling plays for the offense, and he's done a pretty good job with what they have, because he's ham and egging it at the quarterback position. When I watched them last week against West Mesa, I think they had 4, or was it 5, different guys taking snaps. Now, sometimes that was under center, sometimes that was in the shotgun, sometimes it was a wildcat formation thing, but they had multiple guys taking snaps in this game. They're trying to give teams different looks, and they run it pretty well. Their offensive line has been pretty solid, and their defense has been really, for the most part, other than the La Cueva game, in district, they've been fantastic. I mean, they only gave up, I think, 14 to Los Lunas. They gave up 16 to Santa Fe. They gave up 10 to Sandia. They only gave up 6 to West Mesa. So their defense has played really well and has put them in a position now to be a top 8. They finished with a Trisco. That's a game they should win, so I think that will get them a home game. I think they're in position to do that.
Well, there is something that could throw a hamper in things here, and that is Sandia at Los Lunas. And if Sandia can beat Los Lunas, you're going to have your good old-fashioned 3-way tie for second place.
Exactly.
And so Los Lunas could really help themselves out and get a nice seed at 6, we both think. But a loss, and then all of a sudden Sandia's in the mix here, Los Lunas and El Dorado, and then it gets really tricky because of that. So that is a curious game.
So much would, if Sandia won, so much would depend on what the final score is.
Yeah, because
I think El Dorado beat Los Lunas by 6. I'm sorry, Los Lunas beat El Dorado by 8 rather. And El Dorado beat Sandia by 4, 14 to 10.
Yeah, it was really close,
so you've got 2 close games already between these two. Yeah, if Sandia comes in, and their young quarterback, Jaleel Lewis, has been playing some really good, solid football, kind of an under-the-radar 6A quarterback that's been playing solid football, outside of the guys like Cam Dyer and Elijah Hansen, even from Volcano, Zayden Davis from Centennial. He's been playing quietly some good football along the way, so we'll see. Sandia's got a shot in this game. I'm taking Los Lunas, but Sandia definitely has a shot. Yeah, these 3-way.
I wouldn't be surprised, like if the score comes
I would not
back.
Either. I would not either. Sandia, and I love these 3-way ties. They're fun. And they're
fun if they're for first. If they're for second, it's like, oh man, come on.
But they have the ability to create so much chaos.
Yeah.
In terms of district standings and then down the road seating positions. So we'll see. Yeah, Sandia definitely has a shot.
Are you going Hobbs 9? Is that? It depends. They got to beat Carlsbad this week.
Yeah. See, there's another thing. If Carlsbad beats Hobbs,
it changes.
You're going to end up with a 3-way tie,
and then
for
Oregon
third
Mountain
place
is in
that
play
district.
to get into the state tournament.
Oregon Mountain's in not a bad position right now. Right now, I think between West Mesa and Oregon Mountain, and I think West Mesa has the edge. But that is
so they are in bad shape.
That is without Carlsbad having played Hobbs. if Carlsbad were to somehow beat Hobbs, then we'd have a 3-way tie, and then we'd have.
If you're Oregon Mountain, you're rooting for Carlsbad to beat Hobbs.
Look, Hobbs beat up on Oregon Mountain pretty good. Oregon Mountain beat Carlsbad in overtime, 41-40, but I think they lost 56-6 to Hobbs. So their point differential in a 3-way tie, they're done. Carlsbad, I think, has to beat Hobbs by 8, I think. Hobbs is already at plus 13.
Yeah,
Carlsbad,
but I think it would help Oregon Mountain jump West Mesa in the Max Preps poll, which is going to be end-all, be-all for that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, some of these teams, like Rio Rancho, for example, even if they don't beat Cleveland, they're playing Cleveland, which helps their overall strength rating.
Even if they get blasted, which
whereas
is
Eldorado's playing at Trisco Heritage, which is not going to help them at all.
Yeah.
So somebody was asking me the other day, do you think Rio Rancho might fall to 8 and Eldorado go to 7?
It could happen,
sure, conceivably,
yes.
Sure. But I don't think.
That also great poll that we're talking about, the coaches poll, will
the great
change
mysterious coaches sheet. I still have Rio Rancho at 7 and Eldorado at 8. As far as after that, I think it's probably Hobbs 9.
Farmington,
and then actually,
as long as Farmington doesn't lose to PV.
Sorry, now that you say that, I'm sorry. Farmington 9, then Hobbs 10, Sandia 11. And then the 12, I have West Mesa at the moment, but they are not secure. They're playing Santa Fe Thursday night, a game that got moved up from Friday from the start of the season. If West Mesa wins...
Centennial can't lose to PV.
Farmington absolutely cannot lose to PV.
It can happen. That can happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely can.
Yeah, like I said, there's some Hobbs, Carlsbad, Farmington, PV. They're, Centennial Cruises. There are a lot of key swing games in here that could impact things. Sandia, Las Lunas. And then the 12th team, I have West Mesa at the moment, but there are so many possibilities this weekend.
Their overall record helps them.
If Hobbs wins, then the 12 seed comes down to West Mesa and Oregon Mountain.
And it's going to be West Mesa.
And it'll probably be West Mesa. If Carlsbad wins, then you have a 3-way tie.
Unless Oregon Mountain's Max Prep flips them, but it's not going to.
Yeah, then maybe Carlsbad sneaks in at the end. Like I said, Carlsbad, I think to finish ahead of Hobbs, they got to beat them by 8. On Friday. Then you would have Carlsbad, Hobbs, and Oregon Mountain. So then I think you'd have Carlsbad and Hobbs getting in and West Mesa getting knocked out. Carlsbad would be a team that gets in. Oregon Mountain.
So there are some key games this week that really do decide this.
Oregon Mountain would need basically West Mesa to lose to Santa Fe and have Hobbs beat Carlsbad, and I think that would get Oregon Mountain into the playoffs. Is that possible? Probably not.
It's
not.
not.
You never know. But these are the fun things to talk about.
It is.
And as we noted, look, the state playoff brackets, which used to come out on Saturday night, I used to like that. It just became not feasible for the NMA to do that anymore.
Nah, you're looking at like midnight at times, right?
Sometimes it's been very late. So starting last year, we did them on Sunday morning. So I'll be up early Sunday morning to get the brackets as well. We're going to have some interesting things to talk about next week before the first round of the playoffs. So real quick, because I said I wanted to mention 3A and 2A real quick. So St. Mike's and Robertson are playing this week, 2 undefeated teams in 3A. Dexter in the coaches poll is ranked between those two. St. Mike's at 1, Robertson at 3. Dexter, the Demons, have been really good. They had a great offseason, great offensive team. Dexter, I think, is playing Socorro. This week, Dexter has a chance to go undefeated. St. Mike's and Robertson playing. I like St. Mike's in this game, honestly. St. Mike's has been the best team in 3, I think, especially over the second half of the year. But I think St. Mike's and Robertson are both going to end up in the top 4. We're kind of like so kind of like Artesia and Roswell. Even with Roswell, if they had lost to Mayfield, I don't think that was going to impact them in terms of top 4 and getting a first-round bye. Then you have Dexter in there. The 4 seed, I'm not sure yet. We'll have to see how this week's games go. There's some good options in there. And then in 2A, of course, Texaco is undefeated. Legacy Academy from Albuquerque is 9-0. They've only had one close game the whole year. That was against Hope Christian. They beat them 21-20 back in like week 3 or something. Legacy is going to play at Santa Rosa on Friday. That's the district championship game in that district, District 2, 2A, I believe. Santa Rosa is certainly going to be the best 2A team that Legacy has played. Brian Clampett, the Legacy coach, has done a fantastic job.
I don't even think a lot of people know about Legacy Academy yet, to be honest.
I covered them a couple of weeks ago against Raton because I wanted to see them. It's a really good defensive team. And they got some kids that can play on offense too. I'm taking Santa Rosa in this game. These teams are ranked, I think, 2 and 4 in the latest coaches poll. Legacy moved up to 2 behind Texaco. I think Santa Rosa is 4.
Texaco's the team to beat.
Texaco clearly the team to beat. They almost had that slip up against Eunice where they overcame a 21-0 deficit and came back to win. Texaco is the team to beat. But man, if Texaco and Eunice play again, no guarantee of that. because there's some other good teams. Santa Rosa,
Right.
Tularosa, which beat Eunice recently too. There's some other good 2A teams out there. I don't know where Legacy falls. I think we'll have a better idea after they play Santa Rosa, win or lose. I think we'll have a better idea. But I'm taking Santa Rosa in this game, even though Legacy is the higher ranked team and has the better record. I'm taking Santa Rosa. They've, there's a lot to like about this Santa Rosa team, and they've improved with a new backfield this year. So we'll see. Legacy. The thing is about Legacy, if they don't win this game, will they still get a top 4 seed? That is a big question. Then I think, you have Texaco, you have Eunice, Santa Rosa, Tularosa. All those teams might end up higher. I don't think Legacy's quite gotten the respect yet from the other coaches.
But it's also their schedule hasn't permitted it.
Their schedules, the teams in our district are not very good. And even Brian Clampett, their head coach, told me, look, I don't think there's a whole lot of belief in us yet. If they go beat Santa Rosa, that will change. If they lose to Santa Rosa, man, that's going to be one of the really interesting things I'm going to look at when the brackets come out Sunday is, will Legacy still be a top 4 seed? You can make a case for Texaco, Eunice, Tularosa for sure. And if Santa Rosa wins, they'd have to be in the top 4. They'd have to go ahead of Legacy because they won the district. So could Legacy finish ahead of somebody like Eunice? That would be a stretch to me. I don't think Legacy's there yet, but this is the fun part of the year. You never know. If Legacy goes to Santa Rosa and wins convincingly maybe, man, things change completely. So I don't know if you'll be up at 7:30 Sunday. I know I will be. Waiting for these brackets. Yeah, you don't have to be. I do. Anyway, so Adam and I have laid it out. A lot of great games on the board. We've talked about all the top games coming up this weekend in Week 11. I can't believe we're in Week 11 already. And then, as I said, brackets will be out Sunday. And then first-round games next week. Top 4 seeds will all have the first round off. So can't wait. I know you can't wait either.
Love it. Love this time of the year, and then it's hoop season before we know. So
November 11th, man, first day of practice. So I want to thank Adam Diehl for coming
always,
in.
Man, always.
I am not yet finished, but I wanted to thank Adam for coming in and sitting down and talking with me. He and I love talking about this stuff.
It's true.
So many thanks. I know you're busy, and I know you got to go do your radio show today, so we're going to cut you loose.
All right, man. Well, it's been fun.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Okay.